All right, let me take you to one of the day's big stories, and it's coming through from KwaZulu-Natal, where Premier Sihle Zikalala has just delivered his State of the Province address, and eNCA's Dasen Thathiah has been following developments there and joins us now for an update and reactions to the speech. So what were the main highlights, Dasen, and what reaction has come through at this point?
Well, Sihle Zikalala has just finished delivering that State of the Province address, as you can see by the activity outside here now. Everyone has just come outside. Those are the MPs, the invited guests. And although it was a very long address that he gave, he did get into detail about certain of the subjects that were top of mind, I think, for many people in the province as well as opposition parties. He spoke in depth about fighting crime. He spoke about the initiatives there, because that was something that even the opposition parties had mentioned, that beyond doing anything else in the province, something that was key was making sure that it was a safe place to be in. I'm just going to take you closer to this banner that's set up here, because I understand that the Premier is also going to be engaging with reporters now in the aftermath of that address. Let me just see if I can get in here. Premier, sorry to disturb him. We're live on eNCA. Thank you so much for delivering that State of the Province address. If we could just get a few follow-up questions. I know crime was top of your list in dealing with crime in the province, but beyond saying that you're going to, for example, strengthen the efforts, what are the concrete plans that we are going to see to turn the tide, particularly in areas like you mentioned, places like Umlazi, KwaMashu and so on?
Firstly, you would have noticed the plan has already started. There was a big roadblock and search and siege of illegal firearms in targeted areas. So in each area, the police will get in, the big operation as they did in Maritzburg, and that will be rolled out to all areas in KwaZulu-Natal. So that is a practical intervention. But the target must be to confiscate all illegal firearms and deal with drugs. If there are things that are giving rise to crime, I would say four. The first, illegal firearms. The second, drugs. The third, proliferation of foreign nationals who are undocumented. Not because we are against them, but simply because if they are here illegally, it's wrong. But the fourth is to ensure that organized crime, such as contact crime where people are killed, we investigate strong that. But that needs a high level of intelligence-driven operation. So one of the priority we set ourselves last year was to stabilize police. And you would see now, we've got functional machinery, led by the commissioner, led by senior managers. They are in operation. We need to pay attention to revive strong intelligence unit within SAPS, the crime intelligence, and SSA. So we are clear, we know what we're doing, and you would attest that number of things have already started.
Let's get to the other big topic of your address, SAPREF, and the intention there to ask the national government to buy SAPREF. Now, is that not in almost contradiction to almost inviting businesses to invest here? But in this case, it's a case of saying, since SAPREF wants to close its operations, let government take over. Is that not any contradiction there?
There's no contradiction. If there are people who want to invest on SAPREF, we will welcome that. But we cannot allow SAPREF to be liquidated and closed. And that's why we are saying, let government comes into the picture, rescue. By the way, you cannot have a country without a refinery. And it cannot be that we will depend on foreign refined oil. We need to ensure that we build our capacity. So that's what we are doing. And we will speak. We have already met with the minister and registered this view, which he is considering seriously. So we are going to go ahead with that call.
Do we have any idea as to when we will get a conclusion on that matter?
No, we cannot speak on behalf of the minister. We will want the processes to unfold. But we are happy that he received our presentation with warm hands.
Premier, I also recall you spoke briefly about corruption in your address. You spoke about the fact that there were officials that were arrested in the private sector as well as in government. I stand to be corrected, but 24 in government, 16 in the private sector. Beyond that, what other measures have been taken since the last SOPA? Because it's something we always talk about, but beyond the arrest that we saw, what mechanisms are now in place to ensure that this is stopped before it starts?
The first mechanism, all big tenders above 5 million are assessed before they are finalized. So each department runs its processes. But once the department have concluded, then Treasury conduct a thorough assessment on those tenders. And that helps us to see whether there are no people who are inflating prices, whether the process has been followed accordingly. So that is the first, which has helped us a lot. It has saved millions in the budget of the province. Secondly, we are establishing an infrastructure where people will be able to report when there are criminal activities. And I must say, our call has inspired even public officials in departments to report that there is something that is happening. It looks like this and this is being corrupted. And that helps us to stop corruption before it takes place.
Premier, I must also get your view on the arrival of the Zulu King here earlier on today, and that was while your address had started. There was some controversy leading up to today's SOPA in terms of how the royal household was invited. Was that intentional? Was that planned, especially with the king coming in during your address?
Well, late arrival is late arrival of anyone, and it should be understood as such. I take no issue from that. For me, it doesn't matter. There are many people who arrive late. If you will see, the left part, when we started, was maybe 75%. When we finished, it was packed. So there are many people who arrived when we were proceeding. We have had engagement with King-elect. Myself, I've met him on a number of occasions. I've met others as well. And therefore, there is nothing that is wrong. I had already engaged with all of them. And we believe that what you see as a controversy, for us, is not a controversy at all.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, Premier. Let me try and move us just away from this briefing. Try and get closer to Francois Rogers is over here from the DA. Let me see if I can slip into this conversation with him on this side.
That the ANC itself was part of the problems, and that in fact the part of the anarchy that happened was because of factionalism in the ANC. I would have liked the Premier to actually delve into that. And furthermore, tell us who's being arrested, who's being charged. You know, when this rolled out, the Premier was quick to say, we're going to charge people, we're going to hold them accountable. There was no one. There were politicians that fueled the flames, but they still hold their positions. So I think that was not a great start for the Premier. Then I think when he dealt with economic development and job creation, I think him and President Ramaphosa don't read the same book, because Ramaphosa in his State of the Nation address made it quite clear that business and commerce is in fact the job creator. Government is there just to create the environment. Today what the Premier told us was how he's going to create jobs and how his government's going to create jobs. So, you know, I'm certainly not inspired by that. And I think the other failure from the Premier was talking about the failures of local government. We have local government that is an absolute failure. Umzinduzi, the city we're in right now, has continuous problems. In fact, the Premier made a statement 2 weeks ago that he apologizes for the failures in Umzinduzi and takes some of the responsibility. Well, that's fine, but what are you going to do about it? You know, why do you reappoint a mayor who failed in the first 5 years? What's he going to do differently now? So, again, a speech full of content, but with very little deliverables that the people can take home and feel there's going to be change in the next term.
Can I ask you a question?
Mr. Rogers.
Regarding my issue, because if you look at it, there's part controversy. They invited him, he didn't speak, and later they saluted him. By merely saluting him, they are officially saying, no, he's already on the throne. What is the DA's take on that?
Well, I'm as confused as you are, because our caucus was obviously part of discussions that were with the Speaker's office, and in terms of the discussions we had, currently there is no king. Until it's declared by the President, we don't have a king. And the agreement was, and in terms of our standing rules and orders, the current incumbent, Prince, as you would have it, would not be invited, and we would proceed. Once there's an inauguration, then the king would then come and address the province. So to see him arrive today and then to be greeted as an official royalty, one has to wonder whether in fact there's party politics at play here from the ANC, because they say one thing in the legislature, and when we come to an event of this nature, there's an absolute 360. In fact, I think in the Premier's address, he actually acknowledged that there is no king at the moment. So I'm as confused as you are.
Mr. Rogers, if I just want to get in here, there was a promise to eradicate pit latrines, for one. Also, in the next year, in this coming year, so no school would have pit latrines. Do you think that you've seen enough to indicate that there is a structured plan to make sure that happens, or is it just yet another promise?
Absolutely, there is no plan. And the biggest problem is there's no finance. I sit on the finance portfolio, and nothing like that has come through our portfolio to actually allocate funding for that project. So again, a lot of promises in the State of the Province address, but there's no detail to how we're actually going to achieve that.
Thank you very much for your time. Just one of the opposition parties there giving reaction. So lots to unpack. It was about a 28-page statement that the Premier was reading from there, with all of these promises. He did touch on all of the important topics, but you can hear here that some of the concerns are around what was the detail that is going to ensure that these things in fact happen.